Right. Hello, everyone. Today we are going to focus on how we can create our own function. We call user-defined function in Python. Usually we use function to block a set of Python statement for a particular task, and you can have a name block, and this is called a function. And usually functions are used to structure the program. So therefore, knowing how to properly use function is very important. So if you look at how Python defines a function, we have a def keyword, and then we have a name of the function. You can provide a name for this. Remember, you have to follow the rules that we have discussed earlier when you are naming, same as variable names. Then you can have within the bracket, you can have set of parameters. So when I say within the brackets, the number of parameters, which means the variables that we will use to perform the task, right? I'll come to that point later on. And depending on what task you are going to do, you are going to have a set of statement inside this. That is what we call body of the function, right? Okay, so let's look at this with an example. Right. Now, in this particular example, I'm going to create a function called add. So let me open up idle environment. So we have idle here. Right. And then what we are trying to do is add in two numbers. So when we say add in two numbers, let's assume that we are going to create a function called add with, let's say, two values, right? Something like this. And when I press enter, I'm expecting this function to add these two numbers and give me the answer, like 5. Right now, when you do this in Python, you will get an error because Python interpreter doesn't know what add means. It gives you a name error. So basically what it says, add is not defined. So let's define add as a function. We say defining a function, and we'll say add. And as we are planning to provide two values, we need some variables to hold this. We call parameters. So we are going to have two parameters, let's say number 1 and number 2. So these are the two parameters that we are going to have. And simply what we are going to do, we are going to add two numbers together. That means number 1 plus number 2. And then when you do this, right, we add the two numbers and we are going to print it. And if it is success, you will not get any errors. Now, this is defining a function. Once you define it, you can use it. We call a function. So when you call a function, we can say add, we can provide values. And you can notice that when you put a bracket, Python interpreter recognizes that you have to provide two values as number 1 and number 2. So if you provide 2 and 3, you know that what will happen, 2 plus 3, it's 5. You print 5 and you will get 5. And you can use this method or function at any time, right? Depending on what you provide, you get outcome. So simply this is what we call a function. But one thing that you need to recognize here when you create this function and when you're calling, so you can see this is a defining and this is a call. And let's understand what happens. So let me start with looking at this one, adding add 2, 3. So what happens here? So when we say add 2, 3, this 2, the number 2 will be passed to number 1. So the number 2 will be passed to variable number 1, right? So I'm going to put 1 here. So that will pass to number 1. And then when we have 3, then the 3 will be passed to number 3. Sorry, 3 will be passed to number 2. That is a variable. Right. Now what happens? You add 1 and 2 together. So this is the result. And in the results, what happened? Right? It adds the two numbers. That is 2, 3, that is 5, and it will print 5. And you will notice that when you call a function, nothing will return. Nothing will return, meaning like you go out from the place where you call, and then there's nothing come in return. Let me explain with an example. So therefore, the function, the way I have defined it, we call a function without any return value. What do you mean by without any return value? There's no value come back to where it is called, right? So this is the simplest use of function and function calling. So we have defined a function called add with two parameters. And then when you put number 1 and number 2, we simply add them and we print it. And when you're calling, you can provide the values for these, and these are called arguments. 2 and 3 are arguments. 2 will, send to number 1, 3 will be sent to number 2, and this will be added and you'll get the answer. Right. So this is one way we can, write functions. So as you can see here, we will create a function and we get two what we call the parameters, and we add and we print it, right? Now, the next one is calling a function. Calling means you are using the function, and to use the function, you have to provide values. For example, we put 2 and 3. 2 will be passed to number 1. 3 will be passed to number 2. So 2 and 3 we call arguments. So you can see we have defined the function and we are calling with multiple different values. So first we put 2 and 3, then we put 10 and 30, and you will get answers according to the value you provided. And these are called argument for the function. So I hope now you are clear about defining a function. Now, the next thing that I would like to discuss is function will return values. Now, when you say a function with return values, there's no value comebacks here. So let me change this, right? Now, if I do this way, and if I try to save it like this, let me say, I'm going to say answer equals, right? Add 2, 3. And what happens? You still get an answer. And if you see what inside the answer, you have nothing. So this is a bit of a problematic, and this is basically the way we have defined the function. So for example, there are enough of functions available in Python already. We call built-in function. So for example, there's a function called ABS. And ABS, you can provide any number, positive or negative, and it will give you only positive value of this. But these ones you can store, right? So look at here. So if I say answer ABS minus 5, and if you see what is inside the answer, it's 5, because that you can store the value back in this variable. Whereas our case, you have seen, we cannot. We didn't get any answer for this, right? Okay, let me give one more example. Let's say max. The function max can have multiple values. And let's say like this. And we know the max is 90. Right? And actually, we can store the answer inside this. Right? And when you say answer, it's called 90. So, but if you look at add function, our add function at 2, 3, and if you try to save it as an answer, right? And if you try to print answer, you say you get none. The reason is the value will not return. So therefore, when you are defining a function, right, we have to use a special keyword called return keyword. So it's like this. I'm going to change the function definition. Earlier we had def add number one, comma number two, and simply we will say a return. Make a note of this. Return. We will say number one plus number two. So idea of this is now we use, since we have used a return keyword, it will return to the main program. So when you say answer equal add 2 comma 3, and when you say print answer, you get the correct answer. So what has happened now? So if you look at again how this happens, so you will notice 2 is passed 1, right? And then 3 is passed to number 2. And then we have the final answer, that is number 1 plus number 2. It will return here. You will come back. And the answer becomes 5. Therefore, when you say print answer, you get 5. So you can notice here that if you use return keyword, that return key will return the value to the main program. Very, very important. So therefore, we can talk about two different types of functions. Function with return values, then functions without return values. Okay, so hope you are clear about this. Yes. Okay, so let's try to do a couple of examples, and then you can provide me answers for this, right? So let me give you. Let's look at another example. So in this particular case, you will notice that we are using the very same code, but in this particular case, we will get two numbers from the user, and then we call the function and we'll print out the total, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new file for this. So I'm going to say file, new file. And then I'm going to save this code. So the idea is we'll say def add, we are going to say number one, comma number two. And then simply we use return. And we already discussed what return does. It will, find the result and return it back to the main program. Simply this one actually add the two numbers and then the results will be returned. And how do you use this? We can say add, let's say 2 comma 3. It'll work, right? So let me save it. File, save. So I'm going to say this is program number 12. Save. Right. If you do this and if you run this, you will notice that we didn't get any output. You have to say print. So let me rerun, and we are getting answer at the file. Now this is not very interesting. Therefore, we are going to get the values from the user. So I will say I can say int input. We can say enter the first number. Similarly, we'll say j int input, enter the second number. Right. Now that we have said this, we can, instead of this, we can say directly print at I comma j. So what I did actually, I created a new variable and I said I comma j. So what happens here? You say print total. So let's see how it works. I'm going to say run module. Yes, it asks the first number. Let's say 2, then 3, and it says 5. Now let's make this more informative. So I'm going to use f strings, and then you can simply use curly brackets like this. And this will be the same as previous, no change, right? You will get 5. But if you want to say, okay, the answer, the total is, and then we can have the answer. So when you run this, now this time when you say 2, 3, it tells us the total is 5. So you can see how we can, use functions, right? And we discussed 2 different functions. One is a function that will return the values, and then the first one without returning the values. Right. So in the second one, what we want to do is we want to calculate the area for rectangle. So let's say if you want to calculate the area for rectangle, we have to say def, that is a starting point. And then we have to have a name for the function. Let's say area rectangle. And let's say length and width. And then we know we have to simply multiply it, yes? So if you save this, let me save. Let me say this is my program number 13. And let me run this. So when you run, you know that what happens. Simply we can say area rectangle, and then we have to provide length and the width, let's say 150, and it says 5,000. So I hope you got an idea like how we might create area for rectangle. Right. So let me try with the next one. Let me take third one. So you get a name and say you are going to create. Shall we start with the third one? right? So for example, let's say we are going to create a function def. Let me say greeting. And then let's say the variable that we are getting is name. Right. Now tell me, what should I type here? Yes, any ideas? So in this particular case, we can use simply printing statement. It's not a calculation that we need to save. So therefore, instead of saying return, actually you can use return if you want. I will explain both. One way is we can say print, and then I can say hello, comma, and then we can say name. So what happens here? We have hello and a name, and then we are printing it. So when you provide user something like this, greeting Sampath, you will notice it says hello Sampath. If you say greeting, let's say Pinusia, yes, it's, oh, sorry, there's a spelling mistake. Yes. So depending on what name we will use, it'll format it the way we want. So this is one way to do that if you use print. If you want to use return, then let me put down this way. So we can say greeting and name. But if you are returning, then you have to be very careful because you are going to return as a string. So I can use f string like this. Remember our f strings we discussed without any print statement. So I can say hello, and then I can have name. So like this. So in this particular case, if you use, okay, so we'll get it as a string. If you want to make it a print, you have to say print greeting, and then you have to say something. Sorry, I made a mistake again. It should be D, right? So this is the two techniques that actually you can use, right? Shall we, you can take it down. I will get back to you again. So two techniques that I actually discuss is using both print, right? Both print. So let me take it separately. So one way is we can say in this fashion. So let me put it in this. We take my, okay, let me put it here. So this is one version. This is another version. So both techniques will work. So make a note of these two ways. This is, I can say, technique 1 using print statement. This is technique 2 using return statement. So depending on your requirement, you can decide whether you are going to create the function as a function without a return value or function with return. So that's totally up to you to decide. So we are going to revisit what we have done last time, and then we are going to focus on a while loop. So when we talk about the while loops, you have to focus on 3 places. So I told you, you have to focus on the starting value. Yes, and then increment or decrement, and then you have to focus on the condition. So if you are comfortable with all these three places, you have no issues at all, right? So let's write this. So I'm going to get a new window, and then with that, let's work on. So I'm going to get new window. So let me put this as 14, but I need you to help me on working on this. So while loop, I told you the starting value is important. So if you are printing some numbers from 1 to 10, we start with 1. And you have a while, you need a condition. And then let's say I'm printing it. Therefore, I can say n. And then we increase this by 1. What we do here is incrementally involve this. So if you want to print 1 to 10, so we know the what is we need to check. We have to check whether n is less than or equal to 10. So if you put in this form and if you run, we know that we are getting numbers from 1 to 10. Okay, good. So this is numbers from 1 to 10. So now I want you to answer because, so tell me how to print odd numbers from 1 to 10. Which part I should change? Quickly in the chat, please. By changing one single place in this code, you can make it to print only the odd numbers between 1 to 10. Yes? Okay, so I told you what needs to be done is, now first think about, here we start with 1. So you start with 1. You change 1 at a time. So therefore the next number is 2, next number is 3, 4, 5, 6. It goes like this. And whenever n is less than or equal to 10, it will work. So this loop, we are going to end the loop when n is 11. So you print 10 and then 10 plus 1 is 11. Then when n is 11, it will break. So the simplest answer for my question is you just put 2. And notice it, what happens? What happens? Yes, we are getting numbers, odd numbers from 1 to 10. Yes, are we clear up to this point? Simply by changing the in, we can change. Okay, now I'm going to update the question. So how do you print even numbers? How do you even print even numbers? If you do not understand what is happening inside the loop, you can, create a what we call the trace table. In trace table, usually you will indicate how many times the loop repeats. I'm going to say t. Then I can have a variable, right? And then if you want, you can have output separately, right? So let me start. So initially we say n is 10, initially. So I will put a dash here, initially n is 10, n is 2. So no output at that time, right? Initially. Now when n is 2, you come here, n is 2, you check whether 2 is less than or equal to 10. We know 2 is less than or equal to 10. So therefore you go inside the loop. So this is the first time. You print n. N is 2. It will print 2. Then you add 2 to n. N is 2. And if you add 2, it becomes 4. Then this will go back. Now n is 4. You are repeating for the second time. Right? You are repeating for the second time. N is 4. Right? You print 4. Then you add 2. So this becomes 6. So at the end of the second iteration, yes, n is 6. The output will be 4. Simply let's continue. Let me see for the third time. So n is 6. 6 less than equal to 10. Yes, third time it will run. Print 6. 6 plus 2 is 8. Then you go the next round. 8. It's less than 10. You start with the fourth time. You print 8. Then 8 plus 2, it becomes 10. Next time. Again, it repeats. You check whether it's less than or 10. Yes. So fifth time. You print n, that is 10. N equals n plus 2, that is 12. Therefore, right, you can notice that when you finish executing this loop repeated 5 times. The last value of n is 12, but it will print output 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So exactly the same output. Right? Any questions on this part? Right. Okay. So the next one. Can you print numbers from 10 to 1? Printing numbers from 10 to 1 using while loop. Okay. Let's continue our discussion. So if you want print numbers from 10 to 1, right? So the idea is you have to start with 10. So that's what we need to first understand. So it's we have to print numbers from 10 to 1. Yes, print numbers. So the first thing that we need to understand is n should be 10, whatever the variable. It could be n, it could be I mean, so you can use any other variable. Then within this, we have to decrease values. So one by one, first 10, then 9, then 8, and so on. Okay, the next thing is most interesting thing. Whatever the condition, we put it here. I'm not going to discuss the condition yet, but whatever the condition we put it here should allow us to go 10, right? 10 should go through this. Then 9, then 8, then 7, then 6, then 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. After 1, next time you get 0, right? When you have 0, this should not go inside, right? So either you can say the value should greater than 0, or you can say the value should be, right, greater than or equal to 1. I mean, it doesn't matter which value you use. 0 might be better, right? So you can put 0 if you want. So why? When n is 10, 10 is greater than 1, right? It so goes. When n is 9, it goes. 8, it goes. 7 it goes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again it goes. But when it comes to 0, 0 is not greater than or equal to 1. It will come out. Right? So if you go one at a time, you can see this. So let me do the same. So if I put the tracer table, it goes like this for the same problem. So I'm going to use trace table. We started with 10, right? We started with 10. So 10 is greater than or equal to 1. So it goes inside. So the first round, it will print 10. Then you decrease 1. So n becomes 9. Then 9, it's greater than 1. So second time, it will print 9. You subtract 1. 8 is greater than 1. So it will repeat for the third time. It will print 8. Then n becomes 7. Next. So 7 is greater than 1. So therefore, it will print 7. Right? You subtract 1. N becomes 6. 6 greater than 1. So therefore, it will print 6 for the fifth time. And then it becomes 5. So it will print 5. Yes. And then it becomes 4. Right? Next time, I'm going to type it here. 4. Then this will be 3. This is 7 time. Same thing, I will type it here. T, N, and this is output. Now N is 3. You check 3. 3 is greater than or equal to 1. You print 3. It's 8 time. N is 2. Next time 2 is greater than 1. 9 time. You print 2. N becomes 1. Next, right? N is 1. So therefore it repeats for the 10th time. And you print 1. Now you have a 0. What happens next? 0 goes there and it will go inside. So it will stop. So now you can notice it will print numbers from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right? And finally, you can say this repeated 10 times. And n goes from 10 to, 1. Right? So let me run this. Run module. You can notice it goes from 10 to 1. Are we clear up to this point? Print the total of numbers from 1 to 10. So let's understand how to find total or sum of numbers from 1 to 10. So let me first change this code to print numbers. To print numbers from 1 to 10, these are the values we have used, right? We start with 1, we increase the n by 1, right? And the condition is we check whether the value is less than or equal to 10. Right, now to find the total of the numbers, to find it, what is, we have to start with 1 and we print number and we increase the number and then you reiterate. But this time we don't have to print. We don't have to print here. Right? Now, can you tell me what should we do inside this loop? We want to print the total of numbers from 1 to 10. So what should we do inside this loop? Yes, Hema? What should we do inside here? Yes, we have to find the total, right? So we have to do the total iteratively, remember? Otherwise, we would have write something like 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus up to 10. So that could be done. But what we are going to do is we are going to make use of this iteration. So therefore, we will get a variable like total and we will add n. So n, we know it goes from 1 to 10. First it'll add 1, then it'll add 2, then it'll add 3, finally it'll add 10. And one thing we have to make sure the starting value, the total should be 0 in the beginning. So we have to make sure that total is 0. That's all. And finally, we can say print total, right? So if I run this, you will notice that it says 55. Now this is the problem. Now we need to understand how we get 55, right? Again, we can make use of trace table. Let's do the trace table for this problem, right? So what is the trace table? Okay, so we have to have all these variables. What are the variables? I'm going to put t here to check how many times the loop repeats. Then we can have end, and then we can have total. Right. So let me start the initial one, and I want you to help me to fill this table. Initially, we know n is 1, total is 0. Right. Can you tell me what is the next row? What is the next set of values? Okay, what is the next line? So you come here, you check whether n is less than 10. What is n? It is 1. So it's true, right? So you go inside. For the first iteration, you go inside the loop. Now what is total? Total is 0. 0 plus n is 1. 0 plus 1, the total is 1. So total will be 1. You increase n by 1, so n is 2. So after the first iteration, n is 2 and total is 1. After the first iteration. Can you give the answers for the second iteration? Go through what we did for this one. So initially we have total 0, n is 1, and then it goes inside, it will update the total becomes 1. And n becomes 2. So therefore, next time, right, since n is 2, it goes inside, change the total. So 1 plus 2 is 3. It's the second iteration, n becomes 3. Next, third iteration, 3 plus 3 is 6, n is 4. So this is 3, right? Sorry. Then, fourth iteration, yes, total is 10, right? N is 5. Fifth iteration, this is 15, this is 6. Then, sixth iteration, this is 21, this is 7. 7 iteration, this is 28, n is 8. If I repeat last two rows, 8th iteration, this is 36, n becomes 9. Next, 9th iteration, this becomes 45, n is 10. 10th iteration, this is 55, n is 11. And when n is 11, it comes out, it prints the total becomes 55. Right, good. So given this, I think by now you should be able to work on any problem you have, right? So the next thing that we have discussed is for loops. So let me discuss the same thing with for loops. Right. Let me start from the beginning and let me switch, right? And we'll close. Right. Okay. So same thing. Let's do printing numbers, right? Print numbers from 1 to 10 using for loop or for statement. So what we need to do is for loop. So if I use the same variable in, so remember this time we had to use range function and we have in. Now one thing, if you are related to same thing in range function can takes up to 3 different values. So you can have start, stop and step. So if you go from 1 to 10, we have to say 1, comma 11. Why 11? So we start with 1, goes up to 11, not including 11. So that's what we discussed earlier. So when we run, you can notice it will print numbers from, yes, 1 to 10. So we didn't put the third value because third value is a step. Step is initially 1. But if you want to print, let's say, odd numbers, then we'll make it to 2. This is what we discussed last time. Okay, small question. It should be 2. This is 2. Okay, good. So what about this? Print numbers from 10 to 1. Okay, give me the code for that. 10 to 1. Give me the code. So what you need to remember is range function. You have 3 values: start, stop, step, right? Numbers from 10 to 1. What are the values? So starting value is 10, right? That is no doubt. We know where the value should be 10. What is stop value? Stop value. Or is it 1 or is it 0? Can you tell me, is it 1 or is it 0? Remember what I told you about the stop is it goes up to stop value, not including stop. So what is the value? Should be 0, right? Why? Yes, 10 and 0. What is the step value? What is the step? What is the step value? Should be -1, right? Should be -1. So then only this goes like this. Okay, good. I think now I hope you understood because step is From 10, then you have to have 9, then you have to have 8. So you have to subtract 1, right? Minus 1. Okay, now let me give an example. 2 comma 4. What is the output of this problem? What is the output of this problem? Quickly, quickly. In the chat, please, quickly. What is the output of this? So what this says, you start with 2. Step is 1, right? So you have 2 and 3, not including 4. Good. Sachit got the correct answer. Hemal also got the correct answer. Okay, let me give another one. Right? 2 comma 6 comma 3. Quickly, can you give me the answer? Okay, Sachit got the correct answer. What about the others? You start with 2. The step is 3. So what is the next value? 5. Okay, good. What about this? Quickly. 10 comma 6 comma 3. No answer, because 10 to 6, it's go other way around, right? You have to have the minus value. Since you have positive value, it's nothing. No answer. I will run. No answer. No answer. Nothing. Nothing happens. There's no error as well, Parakram. There's no error, but no output. Okay, now can you give me the answer? 10 comma 6 comma minus 3. Yes. First you start with the 10, then 7, right? Next 4. You cannot have 4, right? So this should be 10 and 7. Good. I think you are now understood what I'm trying to say. Okay. Give me the answer for this then. Find the total of numbers from 1 to 10 using for loop. So let me change this. For loop is 1 to 11 that we already discussed. Yes. This we have discussed. So how to find the total? Think about what we did with the last one, with the while loop, when you want to find total marks. So within the loop, what we want to do? Not to print. We want to say total equals total plus n, right? So we have to print total. Yes. And then we have to say total is 0. You remember this one? Yes. So if you have this, we know you start with total 0. Within this, you add n to total. First it at 1, then 2, then 3, finally at 10. Okay. Give me the answer for this one then. What is the answer for this code? First thing you need to understand, what are the values for n? N is start with 2, then 3, then 4. Yes. Then 5. That's all right. So you add it to the total. First 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4, 5. What is the total? So let me explain, right? So let's take, like in previous case, I draw the trace table. We will have how many times this will repeat? N and total. So these are the variables we have. Initially, the total is 0, right? Then you start n from 2 to 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So when you first start, n is 2. N is 2. When you start, it start with 2, right? Sorry, you have here 2. You start with 2. Then you add 2 to the total. So the total becomes 2. Then finally you increase 1. N becomes 3. So after the first iteration, what happens? Yes, n is 2. Second iteration, we know n is 3. And you add 3 to the total. So this is 5. And then n is 4. So third iteration, this is 9 and this is 5. So fourth iteration, it's 5, right? So you add this, it becomes 14. It actually should have been the other way around. So because in this particular case, initially we don't have. So we, along with when we run, we have 2, 4, then, sorry, 2, 3, right? 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can check this. So you can run this, run. So you get 14. And when you check what is n is 5, not 6. Why is that? Because initially you don't have any value for n. Value is assigned for fixed iterations. So this will be 2, 3, 4, 5. First iteration n is 2. Second iteration n is 3. Third iteration n is 4. Fourth iteration n is 5. That's how it goes. And we should get 4. Okay, good. I think you understood what we did. So let's try the quiz again. and let's see how much you can get it correct this time. Right? Yes. Can you go to kahoot.it? Same quiz, but this time let's see. Last time overall we got 37%, right? So let's see how much you can get. Use your registration number as a nickname. Gain pin is 6170001.